All right, let's get to our next caller. This next one is a regular of the show, wants to discuss the importance of faith. Mike, you are on with Ethan and Alice. How are you?
How you doing, Ethan? It's Mike.
Hey, Mike, how you been?
DeMarco. Hey, good, man. How you been?
I am doing pretty good, thank you. So, Alice, just a little background on Mike. And Mike, please correct me if I'm getting anything wrong. He struggled with addiction. He went into church one day. He was an atheist, and he prayed, and he was able to quit his addiction. And that's when he gave his heart to Jesus and became a follower of God. Is that Am I representing your position accurately?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot more to it, but
Right.
sure, it'll work.
The nutshell
So
version.
why do you think faith is important, Mike?
You know, I drive a truck, and today I had a moment. I go all over the country, and I get to see the beauty of the earth and the sky and the sea and the cities and today I have these moments where I just kind of I just get stopped inside and if where did all this come from? Like, how did all this get here? We argue about the universe, like the guy was just talking about, if it's infinite or finite, and it's like, where did it all come from? And then I kind of get this moment with God, and I don't know who else or what other thing could bring all of this into being, like, in the order that it's in, so that humans can be here. I can be on this road driving this truck right now, and there'd be trees all around me and air to breathe and a dark sky with a moon in it and just all this whole thing. And then I wonder, like, if God did all this, where did God come from? How did God get there? Like, how is this all even real, right? And I kind of get stuck in that moment, and I can get lost there. I can get, like, pretty far gone in that thought, but then I have to realize I'm here, I live, I breathe, I drive a truck, I get to see the whole country, and it's like, how did this all happen? And the only thing I could ever come up with is God did it, and I don't think we will ever really understand how he did it. As long as we're on this earth, we have to have faith in God to believe in God. Until we come to him face to face, we won't ever really understand how this all happened and why, and just the questions that we all come up with just as we live our lives, because life is a huge mystery. Everything, and then the more I live and the more I breathe, the more mysterious life becomes to me, because there's so much of life that caters to the care of humans.
So,
and I don't think that we ever really think about it that way.
What would you say if, let's say, tomorrow we were able to explain how everything got here and it was all naturally explained? Would you still believe in God at that point?
And I still think that God created a natural order too. He made it so that the tree would come up from the ground, and that you have to put water on that tree to make it grow. Like, who else? Like, how could a tree do that on its own? And how does water know how to make that tree grow? Like, these things they don't do it on their own. They didn't come up with it on their own. Something made it do that. Fruit and coming from a tree, or a vegetable coming out of a ground. I don't think that the seed itself, right? Where did that seed come from? How does that seed know what to do?
Well,
I can't explain that. All I know is this stuff comes up out of the ground for human consumption, and it sustains our bodies. And the leaves on the trees give us, it filters the air, and it helps with oxygen in the air, and You know, we make our houses out of wood and all these things that we see with our eyes. Where did it all come from? How did it know to do that? Do we ever ask ourselves these questions?
Well, no, I agree we should be asking the questions, but what if, Mike, like what if there was a natural explanation to all of this? Would you still believe in God at that point?
I would, because I think that God made things as, you know, he gave us that word natural. He made things natural. Things come from the earth, right? It's a natural thing. But there's still a source behind nature that we can't explain.
So then,
other than God.
How do you think if there's no other explanations and it's God, then how did God get here? Like what created God?
That's exactly right. I see, and I've asked myself that question 100 times at least since I've been a Christian. Where did God come from? And I don't know. I don't think that we will ever be able to answer that question, because when it comes to what we were talking about earlier, finite versus infinite, if God has always existed outside of time for infinity, like he's never not been there. The only thing that has not been here is us, right? We were created. This earth hasn't always been here either, right? And the resources and all these things. It's like, you know, what do you do with that question? I don't think that our brains are big enough to ever really come to an infinite answer. We're too finite to even figure that out. I'm going to die in 30 or 40 years.
Well,
God's
hopefully
been
you live as long and healthy as possible.
What's that now?
I said, hopefully you live as long and as healthy as possible.
That's right. But I know that I'm not infinite until I leave this body and I get in the presence of infinity, which is God himself. There's nothing else that is infinite but God. Everything else has a finite entity to it, where it was created at a certain point and it will either end at a certain point or it won't. But he is the only infinite entity that we can't explain, that we can't understand. We have a Bible that we sit here and we try to tell ourselves is enough to understand God with, but we really get honest about infinity and the vastness of God. That Bible is just a blueprint. It's like a skeleton. Really, what I take the Bible as now, I quit trying to tell people that have a spiritual life outside of that God can't exist in other things. You know, because that's what we're just shoved down our throats. That this is all God is. This is all God will ever be, is this book. And I have a hard time with that today. The more spiritual I become, the Bible serves its purpose, and there's a lot to it that helps us understand this life, this world, and the history through a religious lens. But there's more to God than that, and that Christians aren't willing to face.
On a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being most confident, how confident are you that God exists?
Very. 10.
What would it take to shake your confidence in that?
For me to not believe in God.
Or to doubt, not necessarily not to believe, but just to start to question whether God exists or not.
Well, ever since I was an atheist, and then God, I asked God, I said, God, if you're really there, if there's such a thing as you, God, then you're big enough to show me that on your own. I don't need no man to convince me. I don't need to sit here in my disbelief anymore. Show me. And he did, through the Spirit. And that's the only way. And since that moment, I can never say that there is no God, and that my faith to be shaken to try to like deny that there's a God, because my faith, like my faith shouldn't determine if there's a God or not. God is there if I have faith or not. God is there if you have faith or not. He's always there. And my faith doesn't negate God or make God real. God is God. And that's another thing that we miss as humans is we think because we believe or we don't believe, God exists or he doesn't. God exists whether we want him to or not. And I don't know if I can ever not think that way anymore, since I was so dark and so like my heart was just vacant of anything that had to do with God and spirituality.
Are you saying that there is nothing that could even get you to question whether a God exists or not?
Not anymore. And if there is, I guarantee, something in this life will probably bring it to me one day, like it happens to all faith Christians where their faith is shaken and rattled. But for the past since 1998, I haven't ever been a day since 1998 that I have questioned if God exists. Since April of 98.
So we have
not one day.
We have a question from our audience. What does through his spirit mean? And how does that contrast showing himself visibly? Like showing himself through his spirit.
Well, if we want to break God down, God is a spirit. And he came to me and he said, it was just like, I am God. I exist. And I was just like, okay, like, it was like in that moment, I came to believe in Jesus. And it was just that, because he did it. Like, he just showed me internally. It wasn't something that I could sit here and say happened like visibly, like you and me talking right now. If I was sitting there next to you and I could see you, all I could do was just know, okay, God is God. And God doesn't quit existing because I don't have faith. And he did that. I can't make God up. I can't create God. God exists because he just does. And the whole spiritual side of that's how we know God. Are we spiritual? Because the main thing that I'm learning about God is, do I have God in my life? Like, not am I some great, mighty spiritual person with all the answers, but is God with me? Yeah, he is.
Real quick, Mike, we get a lot of people with, defining God in many different ways. So how do we tell the difference between God's, quote, spirit and someone's imagination?
That's a good question, because someone's imagination, they try to like limit God to what they think he is or what he isn't. And what I've learned from people that are Christians and people that are Buddhists and people that are Hindus and people that are whatever spirituality they claim they have, right, is that you got to just let God be God. You can't form God into what you want him to be. And that's what we do. That's what churches are. God is this. God is this. This is what God is. And we mold an image of God and we tell people that's what he is. And we don't let people say, let God show you who he is on his own. Let God become who God is to you individually. Let God do it himself. Here, but no, I'm going to tell you who God is, and you better believe this is all God is, or you're going to burn in hell. Like, I don't believe in that message anymore.
Okay. Alice,
that
I believe
people are going to burn in hell.
Say something?
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I had two questions for you. So,
okay.
Two questions. So bear with me. First question, why is it the Christian image of God that you feel personally is the truest and not an older, more ancient idea of God or a more modern, the Muslim version of God? And also, because you're so convinced that God exists and that God revealed himself to you through the Spirit, why do you think that this God does not reveal itself to other people. Like I gave God a test too. So we have sort of flip-flop stories. I was a believer my whole life, but never experienced God. And I gave God a test and asked, like, if you're real, like, show me, and nothing happened. So I'm curious, again, in summary, the two questions are, why is it the Christian version of God that you feel is the truest? And also, why do you think that this God does not reveal himself to other earnestly seeking people?
I think when it comes to thinking that the Christian God, I don't like to even call God a Christian God anymore, because
Okay.
he's revealed himself to me in so many ways through so many different people that are, like I said Buddhist. I talk to Buddhist people and I meditate. I listen to what they say, and because I want to see what they say. Like, how do they call God what they call God? And so I do what they do, right? And I find God through meditation and through just different avenues. But Jesus has been the main source of making me into the person that I am today. Like believing in Jesus Christ, that I call him a supreme being, that there is no God above him. He is that God. And it's just because of the personal relationship I have with him that I can't get from nowhere else. Like,
So
no Buddhist meditation can do for me what Jesus does for me. It does what it does, but it doesn't do what Jesus does. Right?
Sure.
Forgives,
So
heals, and comforts, and right?
would it be fair to say that that what I'm hearing is you're saying that you believe that God exists in certain element to a certain extent in all the different religions or spiritual practices, like God is God, like what you said, God just is, but that because it was in the Christian expression that at first resonated with you, Christianity holds a dearer place in your heart that you've since broadened from to explore the other ideas of God. Would that be accurate to say?
Yeah, and honestly, a lot about Christianity today, just because of the hypocrisy and just the fake BS that goes with being a Christian today, you know, I have a hard time with a lot of it because it doesn't reflect who God really is. It's just religion. It's just people trying to be something that they're not. I can't be that no more, right? And I don't have
No, I'm with
I don't
you.
prove myself to people anymore either, right?
Yeah.
And people tell me that I'm a heretic and I'm this, and I'm like, fine, you can call me a heretic all you want, but at least I'm not a hypocrite. I'm not a phony, you know, because my theology doesn't match yours anymore. Right?
So what about the second part?
Because I've had such.
What about the second part? Why do you think God does not reveal himself to everyone?
And that's a mystery as well. I'm like, my heart, I don't know what your heart was like, because the matter of the heart when it comes to God is important. Our heart has to be like, okay, I'm willing to be wrong. I'm willing to fall flat on my face and you know what I mean? And like face of infinite God in my finite self and realize I'm nothing. Like, I had to do that to get what I was after. I had to become willing to just be emptied and to be nothing. And even in my arrogance with God, in my cocky arrogance and my pride, and you know, I would sense it in my spirit. Like, if I want to hear from God, I got to change my attitude towards him. I got to be a certain way for God to speak to me. I can't just think that God's going to answer me in my human pride either. He does, you know, because he's God and he wants something from us too. And he just wants us to acknowledge that he's God.
I just think that if it were that important to God.
If
I didn't hear you.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Alice.
I just think if it were that important to God to be acknowledged and to be believed in, he would meet people where they're at and prove himself in whatever ways he knew that each individual would be convinced. I know for myself, speaking from my heart, I desperately needed God to be real. I could not have been more humble, more earnest, more sincere. I had everything to lose. I had my family to lose. I had my purpose to lose. I had my life. I had everything to lose. And I desperately needed God to be real. And like he just wasn't. There was nothing. I felt absolutely nothing happened. There was nothing, and I wasted 21 years, the first 21 years of my life, pretending and earnestly acting in faith, believing by faith to have faith, because according to your faith let it be, right, is what Jesus says. So I did everything from such an earnest place. I knew nothing else. That was all I knew. And I knew different expressions of Christianity, but God was all I knew. And I was so earnest, and nothing happened. And I know other Christians have challenged me, being like, oh, well, it's because God has a bigger plan for your life, and he's going to reveal himself to you later in life. And you're going to have this awesome conversion story of how you were an atheist for a little bit, and then God brought you back. Maybe it'll take a horrible car accident for God to bring you back, and you're going to have a near-death experience. And it's like, why would God put me through all that if God is God and omnipotent love? If God is omnipotent love, and it's so important to him that we know his love, why would he not meet us where we're at, which is how he made us, allegedly, to express himself in a way that convinces us without toying with us, playing games of faith? Why?
And to add on
And
to
I
that,
don't, you're the only person, I'm sorry to cut you off, but you're the only person I've ever heard that happen to. I'm in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous all the time. And I deal with people that have major faith problems, right? And I tell everybody, they say the same thing, because they didn't believe, and they want to experience God. They want to believe. And I tell them, I was like, well, if he hasn't come to you yet, just wait, he will. And I'm telling you, within a month, 2 months, after these people earnestly seek God out and give it their all, they come back with, wow, yeah, God met me where I was at, in my need, in my addiction, in the lowest time of my life, and showed me that he loves me. And I deal with people that stick needles in their arms and sell their bodies all day, all night. And these people are coming to have faith in God. And so I don't have an answer. You just floored me. Totally floored me.
And by the way, God is still
because of
welcome
my
to
own
make himself
experience.
known. I remain in a place of like, if any God is there, goddess, God, spirit guides, if anything is there, like I've always maintained an openness. It's like, if there's anything there that cares about me or loves me or wants me to have a relationship with them, make yourself known, but nothing ever happens. And I'm just unwilling to lie to myself that anything's happening that is not explained by other means. Like I could say, I could sit here right now live on this show with you and Ethan and everyone watching and be like, God, if you're real, like, prove yourself. And maybe my light could flicker on my lamp. I have a very old antique lamp, and the lights flicker sometimes. If I were faith inclined, I'd be like, see, that's proof of God. Or maybe, a loud bang would happen. It's probably my raccoons on the roof. Like there's just so many other, I need, if God is real and he knows my heart and he knows the earnestness with which I sought him and would continue to seek him if I were still willing to spend my finite life doing that, which I'm not. I've given up. But God's welcome to pleasantly surprise me. And he hasn't. So it's not that I'm in an arrogant place of, I hear what you're saying, but like, and to be fair, I have also not dealt with addiction or alcoholism. I've not had to sell my body. I've not been to a lot of the very grievous depths of humanity. I've been very fortunate in life. I've had my share of hardships, as everyone does, but I feel like there's something to be said for people who come to God as previous non-believers, and people like myself and like Ethan who grew up believers who left because God either is no longer or never was real to them. So I think, I don't know, I guess I just felt like it was important for me to acknowledge, to not just to you, Mike, but to also anyone else listening, that It's not always arrogance that makes people not believe in God. It's deep, life-shattering humility. It's desperation. It's doesn't get any more humble pie than desperately needing God to be real. And I'm willing to entertain the idea that there is a God, but it is not a loving God. It is not
So,
a God that could interfere
so
with suffering.
Hang on, Mike. Let her finish.
Well, it's not.
okay.
It's if there is any sort of powerful being, a creator, an intelligent designer, it's certainly not one who's omnipotent, as in all powerful, and also loving. There's just zero evidence for that. You know, why would this God let parents put out their cigarettes on their human infant children? Where is God in there? Why would God let children be raped? Why would God let the rape victims then be stoned? You know, where is God? Where is this omnipotent love? So either there is a God and he's a sadist, or he's loving but not omnipotent and all powerful. That's where I'm at.
And Mike, we only got about a minute left. So what were your thoughts on that?
So there is a man that I've met, and he shared something similar with me, that, you know, he has a hard time with God because God doesn't do certain things for him that he does for other people.
Mm-hmm.
And he says that he constantly just has to go back to, he has to just say God exists, whether I feel him or not. I've only met one person like that. And this guy is like legit sober, like he's in the program with me and stuff. He said he's never heard God's voice. He's never experienced like great epiphanies and stuff like that. He said, but he believes in God. And
that's why they call it faith.
in his story, it helps
Yeah.
me. So it helps me to realize, like, God is, he comes to people in many different ways. And some people, you know, he stays more of a mystery than he does for other people. And this guy is okay with that. And like I said, he's one guy. And like, you're one person that he's told me what you just did, and it totally floored me. You know, because you still have it. You're like just faith alone isn't enough for you. You don't have that. And you know, and I can't tell you to have it, because if God doesn't, you know, if you don't have the faith to believe that God is, and the faith alone isn't enough, then I don't know if anything I say or anything God does for me will ever resonate with you, you know, because
no, and that's okay.
Faith is just faith alone.
So I want to give you some homework, Mike, if that's possible. If you could, next time you're praying or talking with God, if you could find out what he needs you to say to us to convince us, or ask him to reveal himself to us, because if God reveals himself, I'll be the first one to change my name to your friendly neighborhood Christian. But I would need something compelling. So would you be willing to do that for me?
Well, sure. And as long as you're willing to pray as well, like, God, if I just asked this man to pray for me, and open your heart up. This man's praying for me, God, and make him a fool or don't. Because now it's like, God, he's putting me to the test too. Like, God, do my words mean anything? When you tell me to speak about you, when you tell me to put my testimony out there, God, what does it do for people? Does it help people believe in you, or are my words just empty, just meaningless words with no point to them? And and I don't want that. I want my words to have power and meaning. And I will pray, brother. I'll pray for you right now if you want me to, right now over the air.
Well, we don't have. We do got to wrap up.
I'm not afraid to do that.
But I am going to ask you, if you could do that. And as always, it's nice talking to you. I appreciate you taking the time to call in today, Mike.
Yeah, thank you, Ethan. Thanks for calling me, man. Thanks for messaging me and making me a part of this.
Always appreciate your time.
Thanks, Mike.
Right,
Nice
man.
chatting with
have a good
you.
Yep.
All right, before we get to our last caller, we're running way over time. So
That's
far,
okay.
are your favorite calls the ghost ones?
You
So what
know,
are your
I've really enjoyed each different one for different reasons. This
Good,
last
I'm glad.
one, this last one, you know, I was aware in my body there was a lot more emotion, whereas other ones it was more like mind of curiosity, and this one was like, no, like I deeply resonate with these things that Mike is talking about. It's just I ended up in a different place, but not because I was any less earnest or any less desperate. You know, it's just, it didn't happen for me the way it doesn't happen for many people. And the way it does happen for people like Mike and other believers, you know. And so I do see an evolutionary benefit to faith, to why humans have the capacity for faith, you know. Like I do think it helps us pull ourselves up and get out of ditches. And I think it gives us a purpose and a sense of meaning that makes us want to live and want to procreate, want to be kind. I think that there are a lot of evolutionary advantages that the capacity for faith lends itself to. But I've also found those outside of faith and in far more abundance personally. You know, and I think that that's where everyone's unique life path influences them. A lot of people who grew up faithless, life just got better for them, coincidentally or not, when they had faith. And for a lot of people who grew up faithful, we felt dead and lost and depressed and broken inside in faith and felt so much more alive and happy and free outside of faith as atheists. So it's like, I don't know, you know, I think kind of where I land with it is like teach their own. Like, yes, I would like to encourage a more rigorous, skeptical worldview, because I do think that faith is holding us back in so many ways and causing egregious harm to so many people. But I also see that, you know, would our species have survived this long without it? Probably not. But that doesn't mean we need to stay. Doesn't mean we need to linger here. We can keep progressing.
Yes.